Hello, I'm Edward Viljoen, and this is From the Center, where we like to talk to regular, ordinary people like you and me about the journeys they have in their life through those dark and difficult times, and how spirituality came to their assistance in getting through it in a powerful way. So I'd like to get right to it because with me is somebody I've known for a very, very long time and who I've come to love very, very much. And she tells me that when she first arrived at the Center for Spiritual Living, that she was going through one of the toughest times of her life. And so I've invited her to come and speak to us about how she journeyed through that. So that person is Melodie Bellagio. Hi, Melodie.
Good morning, Edward.
Tell me about what was going on in your life when you showed up at the center.
Well, it's almost more like what wasn't going on. I had been caring for my mom for a number of years with dementia, and she was entering her final phase of life, which was really wasn't much more challenging than caring for someone who's slowly but surely losing their capacities. Um, my daughters were going through some big challenges. My older daughter was unclear of where she stood in the world. My younger daughter was being pursued by very undesirable young men, and my 29-year marriage was ending.
And so, what were you looking for when you came to the center?
I, I really wasn't sure. My daughter had been coming for some years, and my dear friend Susan Fountain had invited me to come, and I wanted some relief. I think I wanted some assurance that I had the capacity to move through that.
And did you get it?
I certainly did.
Tell me about that.
Well, I can remember very well my first Sunday. You were playing the harp when I first came in, and you began to speak in like a normal tone, inviting me to listen to your suggestions, consider examining my beliefs, examining my habitual responses, and see how if they stood the test of time, if they were serving me well.
And did you do that?
I'm still doing that.
I know. I was thinking that
I'm
as you
still
said that,
doing
that's
that.
a lifelong journey, isn't it?
It is. And I thought of myself as an open and inquiring person, but I hadn't really inquired in that area of my life. I thought my beliefs were pretty universal and steadfast. They were conservative beliefs from an Episcopal and then a Pentecostal upbringing. But, upon closer examination, I realized I had taken things in as a very young child, probably not in the way they were intended to be received.
What was the most startling belief that you discovered inside of you when you began to inquire? Those beliefs that are surprising or maybe even harmful. Was there one that stands out for you?
I think so. That struggle is necessary if you're going to be a good and honorable and worthy person. That things shouldn't be easy.
And when you inquired into that to find out whether it was true or not, and I'm guessing you abandoned the thought, what change happened in your life as a result?
Well, it was very liberating.
Hmm.
I had to get over some feelings of disloyalty because my parents had struggled, and they were wonderful folks. Everyone adored them, and they had helped start the mission, and they had always cared for people in our home. And so it felt a little bit disloyal to say that you could just exist as part of this world, as part of the divine life, and because of that existence, be deserving of a good life and all the assistance that's available.
You mentioned gratitude as a practice, and if you just look anywhere on the internet, for example, and you see that there's all kinds of research or opinions about how an attitude of gratitude is not only good for you emotionally, but probably physically as well. And there are all kinds of things a person can do to increase the amount of gratitude they have every day in their lives. Do you have any suggestion?
Well, I think a good place to start, if that's not a regular thing for you to do, to be in a state of appreciation, is a gratitude journal where you commit to recording at least 10 things, even if it's the same 10 things every single day. What it's evolved to for me now is when I wake up, I just notice how good I feel in my bed. I appreciate the sheets. I appreciate that, for the most part, I'm very healthy and mobile, not as agile as I'd like, but and then I extend that out to being appreciative for my home and for this beautiful city I live in, for my darling daughters and my precious grandson, and It just moves out so that by the time I get out of bed, I'm established in a pretty good feeling.
You mentioned right at the beginning that you were dealing with your mother as she was aging. Was there something about this shift towards gratitude and introspection and inquiry that helped you serve her?
Yes, there was a lot to be grateful for, even as she was declining, because she was able to remain herself just with less capacity. She didn't lose her personality. So it was fun to appreciate her good humor and the very funny and awkward things that she did that you do when you have lost your capacities, instead of bursting into tears every time grieving the loss. I could appreciate where she was.
So before you were bursting into tears and grieving the loss, and then something shifted in you and it brought you to an awareness of how much you enjoyed being with her. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, and then I felt okay at those times when what she did was funny and I laughed, because
Yeah.
when I always have had a sense of humor, but when I was laughing before, I felt
Yeah.
kind of guilty about
And it's
that.
so hard to put your finger on what was the thing that changed for you to have that shift in perspective, because sometimes it's accumulative. Sometimes you have to have the gratitude journal and you have to start sitting for a while in meditation and all the things together. And there comes that moment when you can ride the bicycle where before you were falling from one side to the other side.
Yeah.
Do you remember a moment when you realized something's changed in me?
Well, not a specific moment. I wish I could remember a specific moment, but I think it was during that hard time, which was very early on in my time here, within the first year. I really began to appreciate the vastness of everything. That her condition was very temporary, that all of our conditions were temporary, and that we were not temporary. The beautiful person that she had been before she came into this world, she would continue on and expand. And that was true for me, and that was true for everyone I loved.
You also mentioned the important role of service. Well, serving your family is important service. Um, Volunteering and giving your time to other people, just reaching out to people who are suffering is service. And you made me think about the compelling vision that motivates people who belong to Centers for Spiritual Living. And the vision is of a world that works for everyone. And I always think about how easy it is in America, where we have everything, to affirm this reality and to think about the generous and ongoing sharing of resources. But other places in the world, people are struggling with much less than we have, and
Yeah.
yet they have a spiritual life too. And you've had a
Yeah.
first-hand experience of this, haven't you?
Yes, I did. I had the privilege and joy of going and serving in Ukraine for 4.5 months, as a representative of Centers for Spiritual Living in an established community, teaching daily practices and teaching a meditation class, and a class where I got to make things, make up my curriculum every week. And it was, other than giving birth to my children, was the most powerful experience I've ever had, because I went totally dedicated to being in service. I didn't have any other agenda. I didn't do any touristy things. I was not interested in anything but serving. And I ended up being served far more than what I gave. I received this unconditional love, unlike anything I'd ever experienced.
Our teaching is pretty new in Ukraine, isn't it?
Very new.
Do you find the people took to it well, or was there a cultural adjustment?
By the time I was there, Reverend Barbara Leger, who brought Science of Mind to that particular community I was in, had been there several years. So some of the folks in the class uh, had had made peace with these new ideas, but for others it was just radical. That they were worthy, that they were deserving of anything anyone else was deserving of, because the history of the country has so much deprivation. Um, they've done without, and even if this generation hasn't experienced it, it's in their history. There's memorials everywhere to war, and they lost a fifth of their population. All their young men during World War II, and it's left a huge impact. And for a while, they couldn't worship freely. So this idea of that life can be good and things might be easy is a radical concept. And they've really embraced the holiday of Thanksgiving, thanks to Reverend Barbara. And the Thanksgiving dinner that I went to was attended by several hundred. I guess the first one, only a few people came, and they were unwilling, not maybe unwilling, it was unfamiliar to bring things to share. The one I went to would put Martha Stewart to shame. Everybody brought their most beautiful linens, desserts that I've never even dreamed of. And there was this sense of Thanksgiving, and I began to get this vision of those several hundred people moving out into that part of Europe with this new idea, well, this old idea that was new to them. It was fabulous.
Here we have a metaphysical center on every street corner. There's a New Thought teacher here on television. There's New Age metaphysics, everything you could possibly want. And it's different there. I remember hearing that students have to sometimes travel long distances by rail to get to the nearest teaching center.
Yeah, and teachers travel long distances by rail.
Did you travel a lot to teach?
I travel twice a month to Cherkasy, a several-hour bus ride, and once a month I went with Reverend Barbara to Crimea, which is a 15 to 16-hour train ride each direction. And it's not a luxury liner,
Yeah.
but none of that bothered me there. Not having hot water from May to October, none of that bothered me because I went in service. It would really irritate me here, I'm
Yeah.
probably, but I knew I had something that I had been called there, because they're highly intellectual and deeply mystical people, but what I had to offer was very welcome.
Yeah. And so you went with translators, I'm guessing.
Oh, yes.
How did that work? How was that for you?
Oh, it was that that was perhaps one of the most powerful experiences, because I had to be so mindful of what I said, and to have a destination in sight, not just this verbal journey, which perhaps I've been known for, my children tell me. I needed to know that I believed what I said. And the interpreter was familiar with our philosophy and a highly educated woman. And when I said something that didn't quite ring true, she'd go, "Melodie, what is blah, 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 blah?" And I'd have to think, well, I don't know what that is. Let's just skip that and move on to something I do know.
And this experience, when you got back to home in the United States, how did that change your experience of being here?
Well, it was a little bit hard to come home, I have to say, because I felt so completely fulfilled there. And I was free from the daily mechanics of life, of a regular employment. But I came with this renewed sense of oneness, beyond anything I'd really ever experienced before, that what I experienced with them, what I shared with them, I was sharing with me. And what they were sharing with me, that they were sharing with themselves as well. So I don't feel that there's any place in the world I could go and not feel a connection. I might have felt a little bit of that anyways, just because of my family upbringing. But to experience it on the other side of the world, when I don't like to travel, I get lost everywhere I go. I got lost in the airport. But to still, once I arrive, to feel this connection with people.
Well, part of that vision I was talking about earlier of a world that works for everyone, part of the vision statement sees a world in which borders are irrelevant. And I take that to mean on the human connection level as well. And I think it takes people like you going and traveling into other areas to learn about their culture. That's very important to me too. And then to bring it home, to have a stronger sense of our liberty and our freedom and our resources, and to realize that we can share that. We've got so much that can be shared around the world, and to take steps to do that. I'm Edward Viljoen, and this is From the Center, and I've been talking to Melodie Bellagio, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.